Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with lamb scallopini with pepper and onion agrodolce. That's right, every year about Easter we usually do some kind of roast lamb recipe, like maybe a big old leg of lamb, which is perfect for a large family gathering. But I have a feeling this year is going to be a little bit different. So we're going to take the opposite approach and go with nice thin medallions. And unlike those larger, more expensive cuts of meat, this is super easy to achieve the perfect doneness, which is going to mean less anxiety and stress. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with what's basically an onion and pepper relish. And we'll begin by sauteing some onions in some olive oil over medium-high heat, along with a nice pinch of salt. And what we'll do is cook these stirring for about 4 or 5 minutes or so, or until the onions just start to soften up and begin to take on a little bit of color. All right, we're not really doing like a slow caramelization where these get really soft. Okay, we want them to hold on to a little bit of texture. And about 4 minutes later, mine looked like this. At which point, we're going to go ahead and add our diced peppers. Except my pan was looking a little drier than I wanted. So I went ahead and drizzled in a little more olive oil, which is exactly what I want you to do if your pan looks dry. But either way, at this point, we'll go ahead and add our peppers, along with some minced garlic. And we'll go ahead and cook that for a couple minutes, or until those pieces of pepper just start to soften up a little. And by the way, I'm using a mildly spicy Fresno chili pepper, but feel free to use just regular bell pepper if you want. And then what we'll do once those have cooked for a couple minutes is add something we don't use very often, which is some dried mint, which is going to give this a very unique and delicious flavor. And yes, you can use fresh mint instead, but don't add that now. We would add that later. And we'll also at this time add a splash of balsamic vinegar. And then what we'll do here is cook this stirring for exactly 1 minute, at which point we will turn off the heat and transfer this into a bowl to cool. And then once this does cool down, we'll go ahead and finish it off with some additional seasonings and probably some more oil and vinegar. But basically the base of our pepper and onion agrodolce is done, which I should have mentioned already. It's just an Italian term for something that's sweet and sour, or I guess technically sour and sweet. And then while that's cooling, we can move on to prep our lamb. And what I have here are a couple 8-ounce pieces of lamb top sirloin, which are a beautiful and affordable cut. And perfect for this, because by cutting them in half, we're going to have 4 perfect 4-ounce pieces. And as I was cutting this first one in half, I came across a little tough piece of membrane, which I trimmed out. Which is kind of ironic, because I was just about to tell you how these don't really have much connective tissue inside. Although they do have a little, which as you'll see usually reveals itself as we pound these. But anyway, we'll go ahead and cut those in half, and take care of any obvious membrane trimming. At which point we'll place those between 2 pieces of plastic, and then pound those out to about 1/8 of an inch thick. Maybe a little thicker, but not 1/4 inch. So what is that, 3/16? But anyway, something similar to this. And as I mentioned, once you pound these, you may see a little bit of that membrane, or silver skin as it's referred to. And if it seems like it's going to be easy to trim out without losing any meat, I say go for it. Otherwise, once this is floured and fried, you probably won't even notice that. But anyway, since that was right on the surface, I did take a couple seconds and trim that off. And then what we'll do once we pounded our 4 pieces like a pro is go ahead and place those on a pan, at which point we will season both sides very generously with kosher salt and freshly ground black pepper. And by the way, lamb top sirloin is actually pretty easy to find, especially if you ask a real butcher. But some boneless leg of lamb steaks would also work, as would some lamb shoulder. So go ahead and use what you want. I mean, you guys are after all the dardawinis of your scallopinis. And in case you're wondering, that's my godparents' name. And the entire family are amazing cooks. But anyway, once seasoned, we'll go ahead and dust those very generously with all-purpose flour. And what I like to do is just do a lot on one side, and then use the excess to coat the other side. And by dusting it over the top like this, we can put the excess back in the flour bin. Okay, if you dipped it in a plate, then you have to discard the extra. Oh, and I should mention, some people like to just season the flour and do this all in one step. But I don't trust seasoned flour. Never have, and I never will, because I'm just not sure enough of the seasoning is getting to the meat. So I salt and pepper mine first, and then apply the flour after. And then once those are prepped, I like to let those sit and rest about 10 minutes before we try to fry them. Okay, I like to give them a little time for that flour to attach to the meat, which works out perfectly, because by now our pepper and onion mixture has cooled, and we can go ahead and finish that off, which I'll do by adding some more salt and pepper, as well as a nice shake of cayenne. I also added another couple tablespoons of vinegar, and this time some white balsamic, as well as another couple tablespoons of olive oil, because I do want this fairly moist. And by the way, stop trying to read my shirt in the reflection. You're never going to get it. And then we'll finish this up with some fresh herbs, including a little bit of minced rosemary, and a whole bunch of freshly chopped Italian parsley. And that's it. We'll go ahead and give that a mix. And by the way, I added all this stuff without even tasting it first, because I knew instinctively it needed it. But if you're not really experienced like me, and by experienced I mean old, you should probably taste it first before you start tossing stuff in. Oh, and if you were using fresh mint, this would be the point to put it in. But I just went with the dry, because I really love the little bit of different flavor it gives. And also the store was out of mint, and my mint plant in the backyard died in a tragic spider mite attack. But anyway, we'll mix that up and set it aside, at which point we can head to the stove and pan fry up our medallions, which we'll do in some olive oil that we've gotten nice and hot over medium-high heat. And I'm just going to cook one portion in this smaller pan, which would be 2 4-ounce medallions. And the great thing about lamb scallopini is that we only need to cook each side for like 2 minutes. And by the way, I used way too much olive oil here, which is not a problem as far as how these are going to cook. It just means there's going to be a lot more splattering than there needs to be. So just use about half what you saw there. And like I said, because these are so thin, we only need 2 minutes per side. And if your heat's high enough, you should get a beautiful brown crust on those. And that's it. That's all there is to it. We'll go ahead and pull those off and plate them up. And besides cleaning that drip off, I also added some nice crispy simple pan-fried potatoes to the plate. And of course, we'll top those with a whole bunch of our pepper and onion agrodolce. And that, my friends, is just a magnificent way to eat lamb. All right, so fast, so easy, so beautiful. So let me go ahead and slice in. And enjoy that with some of our pepper onion relish on the top, which I assume is going to be very easy to do since I have a fork and a knife. There we go. I have no idea what happened there, so I will just blame low blood sugar and trying to look in the viewfinder. And I did get a lot better as I went along. But anyway, I'm burying the lead, which is just how incredibly delicious this is. I mean, this was just an absolutely perfect combination of meat and condiment. And not only was that pepper and onion agrodolce perfect with the lamb, but it was also out of this world with those crispy pan-fried potatoes. And because we pounded the meat so thin, we don't have to worry about medium rare, medium well. All right, just a couple minutes on each side, and you're going to have perfectly tender, amazingly juicy meat every time. And whether you're doing just 2 pieces in a small pan, or like 8 pieces in 2 big pans, it really is a fairly foolproof technique. And yes, if you're not into lamb, it will also work with chicken, or veal, or pork, or beef, or really any other poundable protein. But having said that, because of the dried mint and that touch of rosemary in this relish, I really do hope you do this with lamb. But no matter what you choose, I really do hope you give this a try soon. So please follow the links below for the ingredient amounts, a printable written recipe, and much more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.